So here's a solution for you guys that need cheap headers for your engine swap to get the car on the road. I'm not a fabricator. I am not a fabricator. And if you aren't either, then maybe this will help you out. The easiest way to do this is to start with something that already exists. So Flash Shark sent me these block hugger headers for my 302. In a V8 MGB swap, the headers actually have to go around the frame and through the fenders because there's just no space, and there's no off-the-shelf 302 header that will just do that. And Flash Shark makes headers and exhaust systems for all kinds of cars, along with a bunch of different parts. And what we're gonna do is use this to kind of solve some of the more complex problems. One of the problems that I would have not being a fabricator is making a collector where it's all sealed up and looks nice. It's all TIG welded out of stainless steel, and so that makes it last longer and it just looks better. And by starting with this Flash Shark header, I'm solving the collector issue. I already have everything welded together and collected. Now, I've done this already before, and so I have a plan, but the headers that I had on the car were awful. The way I modified them and the welding and everything was just really bad. And so I'm gonna try to improve on that with the Flash Shark headers. These are block hugger headers. That's what I built with last time. That's what we're starting with here from the Flash Shark headers. And so they come down at an angle to try to hold close to the block. The idea is you can get them inside of the frame, but with the MGB, the frame is so narrow that you just can't make that happen. And so instead of getting them to come down at an angle, we actually need them to come up at an angle before flipping back down and through the fender. And the way we're gonna do that is the same way I did it last time. We'll cut the runners off a little bit behind where the bolts go in, flip it upside down, and then add extensions. So flipping it upside down will send our exhaust angle upward, away from the steering rack and away from the frame, kind of up and over. Add about 1.5 inches, I think, 1.25 inches of tubing so that it comes out past the frame, and then weld it all back together, and the turn downs from the Flash Shark header will just take it back down through the fender. I figured all this stuff out the last time I did it. The execution was just horrible, and so we're gonna try to do the same plan with better execution and see if we can't come up with a header that works really well and looks really great underneath the hood of this car. I found the best way to do this is to weld on the outside runners first. So the runner extensions that we made that are 1.5 inches, weld them on the outside first and then do the centers. The two centers are bent. You have to use a bend basically to get them to go in the right direction. And it's just easier if you have the two outsides kind of placed and everything's holding itself together, and then you can just weld in the two centers. Now, you are probably wondering why I'm MIG welding this. It should be TIG welded probably. The extensions I'm making are from mild steel, not stainless, and I tried TIG welding them to start with, and I just couldn't get the temperature right. It was like the mild steel was heating up too fast for the stainless, and I don't know if that's a normal thing, and I'm not a good enough welder to compensate for that. And so I'm gonna have to MIG weld this and just grind it down and make it look pretty. We're gonna TIG weld the entire exhaust, and that's where I'm gonna kind of learn TIG welding, which I know is just the way we're gonna do it. But I'm having to use MIG here just for the ease and because I know how to do it, and we'll just smooth everything out afterwards. And the way I'm going to smooth everything out is by making the fitment better. So all of this tubing is 2-inch tubing. These runners I think are 1 5/8 inches, and that allows me to shape the tube in the right shape and slide it over the runner. So we're sliding it over the runner on the bent side, on the exit side, and on the side closest to the head, we're just as close as possible getting it to butt up with the kind of cutoffs of the old runner. I am going to be bending this tubing a little bit with a hammer and just trying to get it to shape inward so that it's easy to get these bolts in. These bolts are a pain to get in and out. And so I'm trying to make myself as much room as possible. We're not going for peak performance on this car, so it's okay if we have to bend them a little bit. And these headers actually have a much larger opening than the heads on the car. They're made for, I guess, ported heads, which you can open up the 302 heads a lot on the exhaust side. And these are made for that. And so we're not gonna hurt our performance very much yet by denting these in to make it easier to put the bolts in. Now, if we do get big ported heads, then we'll have some exhaust work that we'll need to do. But for now, for what we need to get this car on the road, this is gonna be perfect, I think. With all the tubing tacked together, I'm able to kind of just MIG weld everything. Now, doing the overlapped section is so easy. It's the easiest kind of weld you can do, I think, is a lap joint. And that's what we'll be doing the exhaust out of, by the way, so it'll make it a little easier to learn how to TIG weld. But the front section is much harder. The fitment's not great. I'm not a great fitter. And so I'm having to kind of make up for some gaps and things with the MIG weld and a grinder. But hey, grinder and some paint makes a welder what he ain't, and that's what we're going to live by today. So this is gonna take some time. I'm gonna have to use every sanding and grinding tool that I have in my possession to get these things to look right. But I'm gonna spend some time just whittling these things away, getting them as smooth as possible, and then we'll be able to test fit them and see if this is gonna work for the MGB. Okay, so I took the grinder and ground down what I could reach with it, which wasn't much, but like the tops, you know, they look decent. And I'm not a fabricator, but I'll show you guys kind of close-ups of how this looks. And again, you could do this a lot more beautifully, but for a function purpose, this is good, and it's actually way better than what I had. I'll show you, this is my revision 2 or attempt 2 at making headers for this car. Same basic design, but if you look, the alignment is awful, and those welds are really big and built up. I had to do a lot of filling. There's no curves in these pipes in the middle, and so that made for some challenging welds. The inside is really gross, and the air has to change directions a few times. It's just really bad. Plus they look really, really horrible. These don't look perfect, but they look a lot better if you just compare these two. And I don't know if the camera really does it justice, but I do think that I'll put a coating on these because, like I said, the steel that I used for the extensions is mild steel. It's not stainless because I got it for free, and I'm just trying to keep this budget low. So right now I have, I think, how much were the Flash Shark headers? I think it's either $120 or $180 in this set of headers, plus my welding material. Less than $200 really is probably accurate. So figure less than $200 for a set of custom headers that I have to have for this build to work. So the big question though is, do they fit? Because that was the whole issue. That was the reason I went with the Flash Shark headers and kind of restarted this process, was because the old headers that I had on didn't fit. The bolts wanted to cross thread, none of them would line up. I could get like one bolt for each runner instead of the two that were necessary. So that was a big deal because you get exhaust leaks and everything else, and I didn't want to build my exhaust until I had the headers that I knew I was going to run. And so pending that these fit and I can get them bolted on, these will be the headers that we run. And like I said, eventually I'm going to come in with a belt sander. I don't have one anymore, but I'll get one and just sand all this stuff smooth. So you'll still be able to see kind of the extensions, but you won't see the welds basically. And then we'll probably do like a coating, like a ceramic coating or something, just to make them look a little bit better. But function is the name of the game right now, and price is the name of the game right now. And for function and price, these things I think are gonna be good. Let's see if they fit. Now the reason that you have to cut the centers out is so you can get to the spark plugs, because when you flip it over, you can no longer access, well, it's not even that you can access them, the flange hits the spark plugs, but when you cut it, it fixes that problem. Before I throw this gasket in, here's a good visualization of the difference in the factory manifolds and the Flash Shark headers. You've got the factory here, or this top, come down here, the top square ports, and then the Flash Sharks are round, and you do get, I'll do it like this so you can see, some more exhaust flow there. So I imagine you pick up some power as well if you have heads that can take advantage of that. Mine don't, because mine are just factory heads, so they have the square ports. But if we go to a bigger head, when we go to a higher flowing head, I'm sure that will come in handy, having a little extra room for exhaust gases to flow. I'm gonna slide this guy in there. The last set that I built, I couldn't even use the hardware that came with it. It comes with these 10mm bolts, and I couldn't get a wrench on it because of how poor the fitment was. So there's one, there's two, there's three, there's four, there's five, there's 6, 7, and 8. That's 8 in without cross threading. All right, it's official. They fit. Every single bolt is in, and they look so much better. I mean, even unfinished. I've still got to do some sanding and stuff. Maybe, maybe not, who knows? But they look so much better in there, and this is what I was talking about. Coming out behind the fender, there is the exhaust right there. So that's where we will hook up, run underneath the body, probably out the side right here to start with. I eventually want to run it through the taillights, but to get this thing on the road, we're just going to run it out the side. And there is the exhaust kit. Well, the start of one. I've got to build it. All right, there we go. We have an official working set of headers. We can check that off of the box. They are completely sealed and ready to go. The engine still doesn't have oil in it or anything. I haven't plugged all the wiring back up since I pulled it out in the last video to do the steering, bump steer kind of adjustment system and the clearancing on the frame. But looking at it now, it's kind of in its resting place. We have plenty of room on the frame now for our oil filter relocation bracket. We have plenty of room for the harmonic balancer and the steering rack. The steering rack has plenty of adjustability now, which is great, so we can adjust our bump steer out as we get to the track and start racing. I am way severely under braked, which I realized, I was kind of looking at it today and thinking about it. The brakes for this car are not up for the task of stopping something with this much power. So we will be having to do that, but I will get it on the track before doing the brakes. I know that sounds crazy, but I just need to get it on track and drive it and figure out kind of where we go from here. Now I said this is encouragement. This is why I am not a fabricator at all. And these things came out pretty decent, you know, given my ability. They look good enough. They're gonna sound good. They made up to the engine like they're supposed to, and they're getting this swap on the road. So if you are swapping an engine and you need some headers to start with, check out Flash Shark. They've got super cheap headers, and you can start there and cut them, weld them, and everything else so that you can get your project on the road too. Or if you have a car, if you're crazy enough to have a car that has the engine that belongs in it, still in it, you can just bolt them on, and it's way faster and easier and way less sweaty. But the point is, you don't have to be a pro fabricator to make cool stuff. You can make this stuff in your garage. No, it's not gonna look as good as if a pro fabricator did it, but it's gonna cost you 200 bucks instead of 2,000. And that means you get your car on the road faster. Thank you guys so much for watching Built. Thank you to Flash Shark for making this video possible. You guys have noticed we've had a couple of sponsors, and that is allowing me to make content for you. So go check Flash Shark out. I'm gonna leave a link in the description below. Just check it out. See if they've got parts that will work for your car, and maybe you can get your project back on the road too. Thank you guys so much for watching. We're building an exhaust in the next video. See ya.